Hello and welcome. This is Talking in Spirals. We are extra chaotic today, still talking in spirals, and we're glad you're listening.
Yeah, I think we say that at the head of every single episode. We're like, this one's going to be even weirder.
We just have to prepare our lovely listeners.
Yeah, at this point, no more disclaimers. You're in for a wild ride.
So today we're talking all about imperfect sustainability and what it's like to be imperfect environmentalists. But before we chat about that, what is your hyperfixation this week?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking. Currently, my hyperfixation today is your sourdough recipe, ma'am. Thank you so much for introducing me to the fact that I don't need to do the hands-on traditional sourdough recipes that I've been seeing all over the internet. This is a heads up that if you're not interested in bread, you might need to skip a few minutes because we're about to dive into the topic of bread. Um, but I highly recommend you listen because if you're not interested in bread, you should be. If you're unfamiliar, if you've never baked sourdough, you might see these videos of people making sourdough, maybe us, and think, wow, this is a lot of work. I'm never going to get into this. I don't care. I'm never going to do this. Hold the phone. It doesn't need to be hard. I just learned. And this is coming from someone who's crazy and likes being extra and doing things like intensely. Like I will dedicate an entire day to doing a weird fermentation project because that's just who I am. But Maria introduced me to making sourdough in the most simple and easy way ever. And I did it and I've been doing it and it's amazing. So would you care to tell the people what I mean by that, since this is your discovery?
Listen, I am lazy. I'm just gonna put that out there.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
When it comes to making bread, I can be lazy.
Yeah, because you make more bread than anyone else on earth, so you got to cut some corners.
I do make a lot of bread. About a year ago, I was new to my sourdough phase. I finally got my starter up and going. I could finally make a loaf of bread that wasn't flat. Everybody has these very intricate recipes. You have to stretch and fold after 30 minutes, stretch and fold after 45, which is basically just picking up the dough and literally stretching it and turning it in on itself. And I did that for a while. And then I just didn't and stopped doing it and thought, what's the worst that could happen? And then I did some research and discovered that big bakeries that produce a lot of sourdough bread don't do stretch and folds. So you can basically just model the way that you're doing bread after how bakeries do it, where they use time and room temperature to let the gluten develop. Whereas home bakers who are making one loaf or two loaves at a time will use stretch and folds to help develop the gluten and the gluten web. So I got lazy, stopped doing stretch and folds, and I just let my dough bulk ferment on the countertop overnight, and the gluten develops overnight, and then you have easy sourdough. It's a very niche thing to talk about literal stretches and folds on a podcast. Sorry.
Right. Like 5 people are interested in this, but it's totally changed my life. Like I love to make bread, I love sourdough, and now that I know the information that you just shared, yeah. Wow.
You're welcome.
There's very little likelihood of me going back to doing the stretch and folds and doing the 4-hour thing where every 30 minutes I go and I stretch the dough over itself. It's like, why are we doing this? Just for cosplaying like
Yeah.
it's 1860? We don't need to do that.
Don't get me wrong, there are some days that I will literally do it by hand and not use my mixer
Oh, yeah.
and just be hands-on.
Just for fun.
Because I need to unplug and not scroll and just do something with my hands.
Yes. Yeah, do it for the sake of doing it. Same. But now that I know that if I need a loaf of sourdough, it's not going to take me 2 days, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Wow.
It's 12, 14 hours of process and maybe 10, 15 minutes of mixing the dough and then 10 minutes of shaping it and then literally just putting it in the oven to bake.
10 minutes? I literally think the whole hands-on time for me of the entire process was 15 minutes. Everything, including I put everything in the mixer, mixed it all up. I didn't even get my scale out because Maria does cup measurements, which is pretty rare in sourdough.
Scales are overrated.
I love my scale. But anyways, I did the cup measurements and it worked. And then I just put it in the stand mixer, mixed it all up. It took 2 minutes to come together and form a ball. And then I put a towel over the top and let it sit on the counter. I went to bed and then I woke up and baked my bread. That's it. And it was amazing. And it was so easy. So if you are avoiding getting into sourdough because you think it's like way too much work and you're seeing all these like housewives making it look incredibly difficult and making it look like it's more work than it is, they're doing that for like aesthetic reasons. You don't have to do all of that stuff. And it's actually not that hard to make sourdough, and it's amazing. And you should try it, you know? Shout out Maria's online store. If you want to buy a starter, you can buy one from her shop.
I think you shout out my store more than I do, and I appreciate you so much.
Oh, yeah. Maria has an online store. Do people not know this? Like, Maria has an online store. Maria sells everything. Like, I forget how much you do. Like, I didn't know I could buy freaking loofah seeds off your website.
Sold out now, sorry guys, but yeah.
Well, she sells a lot of cool stuff.
I just like opened it in the quiet last summer and just like responded to comments to people and were like, yeah, I have seeds, they're on my shop. And then I didn't actually do a launch or like even really promote anything till the beginning of this year.
Yeah, you really didn't. I didn't know for months that she had an online store.
I'm really bad at marketing myself when it comes to that.
Well, I'll brag about you. She's doing really well, and you can buy her starter, you can buy her labels, you can buy all kinds of things. You can't buy anything from me because I'm lazy and haven't launched anything that has to go in the mail.
I bit off a little more than I could chew, but here we are.
That's really your style. So, if you want a starter, buy one from her site and honestly give sourdough a try, because even like the most difficult way, it really did add a lot of value to my life and I really did love it. But now that I know it's so easy, wow, everybody can do it and everybody should.
Yeah, the internet always makes it look a lot harder than it is, and learn from our mistakes. It took me 2 years to realize that, and Brennan a year before realizing that sourdough is not that hard, not that complicated.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Once you have a starter, you're good.
Yeah, like most people, like most things in life, it's just one of those things that you have to just dive in and do it. Like, you will make yourself crazy watching videos about how to do things and then not actually just doing them. I think that's something to be said for like pretty much all arenas of life.
Yeah.
Now everybody consumes content and like watches things about things before actually just diving in and doing it. And I think there's something to be said for just trying it, just actually like getting a feel for it. You know, we started this podcast with absolutely no idea what we were doing, and we're like, we're going to do it, we're going to figure it out. And don't tell us if you think it's bad.
We're going to keep doing it anyways. Somebody gave us microphones and nobody's taken them away.
Nobody gave us anything. We just bought them because we were like, we want to do this. So that's, you know, how did we relate this to bread? I don't know.
It always comes back to bread.
Everything does, right? What's your hyperfixation?
I
Panics. She doesn't have one. She has too many to count.
I did not have a hyperfixation until about a minute ago because I realized that usually at this time of night I'm in bed reading on my Kindle. I entered the Kindle world. I broke my no-buy year and spent $200 buying a Kindle.
Wow, I never thought the day would come. You're an avid collector of physical books. I am shocked. Maria is a full-on bookstagrammer. She has like, how many books do you have?
I have a library. I have 1,200 titles in my library.
Physical books.
Oh, physical books is at 1,040. 1040, I think, is my number of physical books.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, she's a library in her house. So this is definitely like a passion point for you. And I'm really shocked to hear that you've gone over to the ebook dark side.
So there's a reason for it. So being a bookstagrammer, I get a lot of advanced reader copies of books. So
ooh, humble brag.
So I get a lot of authors and publishers that send me copies of books before they're released to read and review.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of cool because I get a lot of books from really popular authors like a couple months before they come out. And this is not very hard to do. I mean, it's easy to get on publishers' mailing lists, and it's pretty easy to get onto something like NetGalley, which is a website where you can just like request upcoming books and then they can approve it. So a lot of those are e-copies of the books, which I'm okay with because I'm trying to curate a library filled with books that I actually love, all 4- and 5-star reads. So I've been working on this huge project over the last 3 or 4 years where I'm reading every single book that I own, and if I don't want to keep it, I get rid of it and I donate it to a little free library if I didn't like it or I'm not going to read it again. All in this idea of trying to curate a collection that is books that I stand behind and books that I love. So when I get a lot of those advanced reader copies, they're ebooks, which I'm okay with. Moral of the story, the reason why I got a Kindle, I have an iPad and I used to read my Kindle books and my advanced reader copy books on my iPad. But after working on a computer all day and using my phone all day, it is so hard. It's so hard.
I was just about to say.
Yes.
The last thing I want is to look at a screen.
Yes.
That's what's kept me from the e-reader, even though I could get the Kindle Paperwhite or whatever, the one that.
It's so much better though.
In my brain, it's still like, ugh.
The type of screen is different.
I'm hearing that you really like it though.
Oh, I love it. And I had the Nook, which is the Barnes & Noble version of the Paperwhite. I've had that for like 10 years. It's going on strong. That's also like the Paperwhite where it can be like a non-backlit screen or a very dim backlit screen, but it doesn't strain your eyes and it doesn't hurt your eyes. And I found that since I bought my Kindle, I've been reading even more.
Oh, wow.
Which is good and bad because sometimes I'm up until like 1 a.m. finishing a book. The other night, my husband was like, "Can you turn that off?"
Can I ask you, like, how much do you actually read? Like, how you read every single day, obviously.
Yeah. In 2021 and 2022, I read over 400 books a year. Last year, in 2023.
Wait. I'm sorry. You read 400 books a year?
Yeah.
There's only 365 days in the year.
Yes.
Multiple books a day?
There were some weekends, because think about it, 2021 was COVID time still too, where we weren't going out and doing things.
Okay. All right.
There were some weekends where I would finish like 6 or 7 books between Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm a homebody.
Do you know how rare it is for me to be speechless? Like, I'm speechless. 400 books in a year.
I've already read 50 books this year so far, I think was the last time I looked.
This is all astounding information.
52 books.
How many hours a day are you reading? I'm impressed. I'm just astonished because I'm speechless. Like, that's how many hours a day?
I've started implementing a no screens past like 8:30 rule.
Oof, I gotta get on that.
So when it hits 8:30, I go downstairs if I'm still working or if I'm still doing things up in my office. I go downstairs and I read.
Obviously, the Kindle doesn't count towards a no screen.
Yeah, the Kindle doesn't count. The Kindle does not count. The other thing that's really helped me too is audiobooks. So
yeah.
In 2021 and 2022, I was doing a lot of driving just for work, and I would always have an audiobook playing. And in 2022, I was working as a graphic designer at a nonprofit, and my supervisor didn't care if I had headphones in. So I was also listening to books while I was designing things. So that's how I did it.
I guess it's still very, very impressive, but I guess the sheer amount makes a little bit more sense when I understand that you can be multitasking if you're listening to a book, I'm not even going to share how much I read because I am a disappointment to our nation. Like,
no, never. Any reading is good reading.
Well, honestly, I'm not doing a lot because I just don't, it's hard for me to get into. I need good book recommendations. Like, obviously, I can follow your Bookstagram account, which I did. I'm embarrassed to say that I followed it while we were recording this podcast one time. You guys can go back and find, but I need to find my exact book niche where it's like, this does it for me. Because my thing is I read before bed and it is part of my like sleepy nighttime routine, and I don't want to be reading things that get me more awake, if that makes sense. Like, if I'm reading, like I used to read like some sort of kind of more thriller stuff, like I can't read that before bed. So you have to find like the perfect kind of book that will like help me sleep, but it's not so boring that I don't want to read it. Because that's what happens with a lot of them. Like, I'll be like,
Yeah.
it takes me some time to get into it, but I'm guessing you just push past it. Like, you're just like, well, I have to finish it. Like, I'll just stop reading it, and I hate that. I don't want to do that.
So in the Bookstagram community, it's called the DNF, did not finish. I've been really bad with DNFing.
Wow, there's terminology. This is like a whole new world for me.
Maybe we should not talk about imperfect sustainability and just talk about reading.
Yeah, we can do that.
So was really bad with DNFing. I would push through books that I just wasn't vibing with and didn't like. And it put me into funks where I would like go a few days without reading. And like, that's not really me. And that was a big part of my problem last year too, is that when I used my limited time to read, I found I was reading books that I wasn't really enjoying. So I didn't want to keep reading. And then I just found other things to occupy my time.
Right, that's how I feel about it because it's I wanna be mindful of the time that I have, and, like, my nighttime routine is kind of precious to me. It's really the time when I allow myself to just be really selfish and, like,
Yes.
go completely inward and just wind down, and, I don't wanna be reading some if I don't love it, I'm just like, "Ugh."
Yeah, you need to put it down. That's what I learned the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, I put a lot of books down, like, I have a stack next to my bed of books I just, like, lost interest. Wow, I knew you were a big reader. I have never in my life heard of 400 books a year. I am astounded.
Believe it or not, there are people that read even more than me on Bookstagram.
How many? But do they work? There's no way they're sleeping. Like, do they have kids? I mean, there's just no way. It has to be your whole life. Or maybe I'm just really bad at time management. I don't know. Or you guys are just speed reading, like just like flipping a page every 30 seconds.
So 2020, I read 406 books, which was 140,000 pages.
We were all a little
Yeah.
we were all a little unhinged in 2020 though, so I'll give you that.
2021, I read 478 books with 167,000 pages.
Wait, I'm actually like I'm astounded.
2022 was a bit more reasonable. I read 207 books.
Oh yeah, okay, reasonable. Literally making us all look like complete degenerates. Like I read an Instagram caption today.
And 2023 was my worst year. 2023 was 36 books.
That's a very
So,
significant dip. I'm still really impressed by 36 books a
yeah.
year. If I read 36 books a year, that would be insane for me. But to go from high 400s to 36, yeah, that's a big drop for you.
Yeah, last year it was a hard year between going content creation full time and planning a sustainable wedding and just life in general. So, I did not do very good with reading.
No, I mean, 36 books a year is still really good in my opinion.
So this year I set the goal of one book a week, and I actually just finished my 52nd book today.
I'm amazed.
So that's reading. There's our reading tangent for today.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry we went on such a tangent. That really just blew my mind. And wow, you amaze me. I don't feel that bad about the fact that you edit the podcast now because apparently your brain is just functioning on another level. So,
Would you be shocked if I told you that I was listening to audiobooks while editing our podcast too?
yeah, no, that's insane. You're kidding.
No.
You're kidding. How?
My brain can process two different like waves at once. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I can process and understand like what I'm listening to and editing, but I can also understand like what's happening in my book.
I have trouble with the tap your head, rub your stomach thing.
But I also can't do that.
That is wild.
Yeah, I've always been that way.
That is wild.
That's how I was able to like work a full-time job, but also like always have an audiobook in my ear.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I'm learning a lot about you today, and I thought I knew quite a bit, but apparently not.
So that actually brings us into imperfect sustainability, this topic of our episode, because I bought a Kindle new. Broke my no-buy year where I was supposed to be reducing overconsumption, but it's something that has really brought me joy. I'm not perfect. Newsflash.
Breaking the no-buy year is symbolic of this episode, which is all about imperfect environmentalism. So if you've been listening, you know that Maria is doing a no-buy year, which she just broke apparently. And I was going to ask you how it's been going as an imperfect environmentalist. How does it feel to be maybe not, doing the whole no-buy thing the way you thought you would?
I think my no-buy year in general has been a positive outcome so far because I am nitpicking my purchases and my spending, but in a good way where I'm recognizing that maybe I don't need everything that I'm adding to my cart, but also allowing myself those moments of joy. I mean, I think The first month I spent a couple $100. February, I spent a couple $100 on like just random things that I didn't anticipate coming up. But March is the first month where I spent over $500. So it has been a good experience and I feel very productive. I feel very productive in shifting my mindset in that I don't have to be perfect and stick to a no buy year and not overconsume at all. And it's really opened my eyes to the level of consumption that I was doing last year at this time. But I'm still allowing myself a little bit of joy.
Just a little.
Just a little bit of joy. And my Kindle has brought me that joy.
I'm in favor of this purchase. One could even argue that you reading on your Kindle is keeping you from shopping on Amazon or whatever. You know what I mean? Everybody's got their outlet.
Also true. Or even just scrolling TikTok.
Right. Everybody's got their outlet that like works for them, that allows them to consume less and go more inward. And reading, I think, is pretty much only positive, depending on what you're reading. Obviously, there's some trash books out there,
True.
but that's a great thing to do. And I'm pro you buying the Kindle. Maybe I should get one.
I will convince you all the way. I've done so much more reading now, if that's even possible, since I got the Kindle.
Okay, well, maybe I should do it because I keep putting books down. So, we talk about imperfect environmentalism a lot, just as individuals and also together. So, what does it mean to you to be an imperfect environmentalist?
As environmentalists in this space, we've kind of been every kind of environmentalist. In 2016, we were putting trash in a jar and trying not to throw anything out. In 2018, we had the craze of the plastic straws and not using a plastic straw and shaming everybody that was using a plastic straw. And every year or two, we've had a different instance of that. And I feel like the way the movement has shifted now has shifted more to this idea of imperfect environmentalism, where you don't have to be shoving all of your trash in a jar. You can just put it in a bag and put it in your trash can. You can use a plastic straw if you need a plastic straw and you're out and really don't have another option. Focusing on the bigger picture is really what it means for me about being an imperfect environmentalist and knowing that I don't have to be perfect to make any sort of impact.
Well, you summed it up really well. I think it's honestly kind of self explanatory, but it goes a little deeper with us because environmentalism is a bigger part of our lives than the average person, and it's been a spectrum. We have spoken, I mean, at this point, this is like our 8th episode, and we've touched on this topic pretty much in every single episode. I would be shocked if there was an episode where we didn't bring up imperfect sustainability, imperfect environmentalism. So I think at this point, like, if you don't know, now you know. This is kind of our whole MO. This is kind of like our ideology wrapped up in a neat little bow. We're both really passionate about this. And in our last episode, we were speaking about climate anxiety and just how to combat that. We brought up the idea of just doing what you can within your own personal, unique set of circumstances. So I think that for me sums it up. That's exactly what imperfect environmentalism is. It's allowing yourself to be the person that you are. Your own individual, unique set of circumstances does play a role in the things that you can and cannot do.
True.
And just personally, I'm a big fan of individuality within environmentalism and within sustainability. I wrote a little bit about this recently. This is just one example. When I was first getting into sustainability, I saw a lot of girls who kind of all looked very similar. And again, this was like 2016, that era. It was like the era of this girl who was white and thin and blonde and had a jar of trash and kind of had like a capsule wardrobe and a very minimal interior of her house. And that was kind of like the poster child of the movement. And that is not me. Like, if you guys know at all, I'm very into style. I love getting dressed. I have like a funkier taste. Like, my house is a little more maximalist. Like, I like bright colors. I don't want everything to be different shades of beige. And it sounds so silly, but I didn't understand that sustainability is not an aesthetic. I think a lot of people think it's an aesthetic and it's not. And it's actually insane that social media turned it into an aesthetic. It's crazy.
Everything's an aesthetic these days.
Apparently, everything's an aesthetic. It's wild, and we can do a whole episode on that. Personally, for me, imperfect environmentalism ties a little bit into allowing myself to show up as the person that I am with my own hobbies and interests that don't necessarily fit into this bubble or this box, and also simultaneously being a person who cares about the environment. So I am a person who has my own personality traits, and I'm probably filled with contradictions, as are you with your Kindle and your books. Like, I'm sure people look at that and they think there's no way that this person is, a minimalist, as they say, but that's something that's really important to you. And that's a big part of your life. For me, I have tons of examples too. So I think just there is space to show up as you are while also making some changes or taking some steps within your own life to being a more eco-minded person. So, yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot.
I think it's really important to mention that we know that we are not perfect people. I get comments once, maybe even twice a day of, especially when I share my bookshelves, saying, how is that planet friendly? How are all those books planet friendly? Or the most recent example, I have yet to find a gallon size food storage bag that I can stick in the dishwasher and sanitize that is the perfect size for super cubes. Stasher bags are not big enough. I tried the Target inexpensive ones. They're not quite right either. So I still use disposable, reusable gallon size bags for our freezer storage and our food prep. It just is. There's no better solution. And it's interesting when people point out those little things in the comment sections of our pages about how almost like all of the other work that we're doing in sustainability and imperfect sustainability didn't mean anything.
It's like it didn't even mean anything. Like, it's like for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very frustrating.
It's so frustrating. And I want to make everybody aware that we know that we are not perfect, that we are not projecting this idea of being the perfect environmentalist. We are always projecting imperfect sustainability because
That's literally in my
mine
bio for
too.
that reason.
If we project perfect sustainability, people are not going to join in. They're not going to want to join in and be perfect. Like sourdough, for example. We were just talking about that. If the sourdough process is too complicated, nobody's going to want to join in and do it. And that's the same way with sustainability.
Yeah, it's the same thing with everything. If you make it look like it's this chore, like it's this standard that you have to reach, like the goalpost is always moving.
Yeah.
That's the problem. There's always going to be somebody who thinks that you're not good enough. And of course, this might be getting too niche when we're talking about, being people that have a platform that share this stuff for a living. We're maybe a little bit more sensitive to it than the average person. But the truth is that there's always going to be a level that's better than where you are.
Yes.
Quote unquote better. There's always going to be someone who's doing more. There's always going to be someone who, is reading 475 books in a year and you've only read 10.
At me, why don't ya?
I will. I was personally victimized by that number.
But I would like to point out that I may thrive in reading, whereas I am horrifyingly terrible with social situations, whereas you are always doing something. You took a silversmithing class. I don't think I've ever taken a class for fun in my life.
Yeah. I love doing things. I love talking to people. I love being out in the world. It's my favorite, and you hate it. And I love that about our relationship.
Opposites.
Opposites.
We attract.
Right. We attract on opposite sides of the country too. I think that as we get older, there's a lot more space for being forgiving with people, the choices that they make, the things that they do, what works for them, and just being okay with not fitting into a box and giving the disclaimer at the beginning of everything that you do that you're still learning, you're still figuring it out, you're doing what you can. So, for example, I live in a walkable and bikeable area, and that was something that was hugely important to me when I decided to live where I live. And that was a decision that I was able to make at this point in my life that I wasn't able to make 3 years ago. And that has impacted my life personally in a really positive way. Just, on an individual level, just my day-to-day life is so much better and easier. But also environmentally speaking, like I drive maybe once a week, and that is not the case for you. And that's not a possibility for you.
I drive every day. I'm not in a walkable community.
And that's actually the case for a lot of America.
You're one of the only people that I know that live in an actual walkable community.
Yeah, and it wasn't even easy to do. Like, it wasn't even something that was that feasible within the city that I live. So,
Yeah.
like most people in my day-to-day life still think it's wild that my bike is my primary form of transportation. And for the record, I do have a car and I do use it, but not that often. But there was a time in my life when in my last apartment, I had to drive like 40 minutes every single place I needed to go. And that was my reality. And instead of beating myself up about it, like that was just the world that I lived in. And that was how my life was.
Yeah.
And that was okay. So it is all about the way that you look at it.
And everybody has access to different resources and even at different times in your life. I mean, you're in a very walkable community now. You're not using your car very much now, but prior you were. And everybody has different circumstances. You're only able to do so much with where you are in your life.
Yeah, that's really the moral of this.
There's a dog trying to get in my office.
Hopefully, it's your dog.
Oh, yeah.
Something personal that comes up a lot on this topic is the dreaded dietary label that a lot of us imperfect environmentalists get asked about. I think you know what I'm referring to, Maria.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say you're talking about vegans.
Yes, as a former vegan myself, I am, even though people tell me that I was never vegan. I was never vegan.
Oh my God.
Because I never cared enough. Yeah, so this is a topic that's like pretty sensitive for me because I've gotten like actual death threats about this, and it's like a lot more upsetting than I think it should be. But personally speaking, I was what I considered vegan. I didn't eat any animal products for 5 years. I was raised pescatarian, so I never ate meat growing up. We ate seafood, but it was the 90s and early 2000s, and I lived in a fishing town in Florida, and it was like already pretty radical to be pescatarian, you know, just to not eat meat in the South. And so then I went vegan fully. I think it was in 2016, and I stopped being vegan in 2021 or 2022. I was kind of like making some exceptions and eating a little bit of cheese here and there for a bit. And I still consider myself predominantly plant based. I still don't eat meat, and I don't think I ever will. I know you're not supposed to say never, but I have gotten a lot of pushback when I've spoken about that, and I understand because I was very passionate when I was actively very vegan. I was very passionate, and I understand, and I know that this is a tricky topic, but long story short, I'm not going to get into it because some of it is personal, but I had some health stuff come up, some of it to do with my actual physical health and medical stuff, and then some of it to do with my troubled relationship with food. And in order to heal that, I got rid of the label. I stopped being quote unquote vegan, and I just started eating a predominantly plant based diet and eating what made me feel good and not putting so much stress on food for me. And that was the healthy, good decision to make at that time. And I'm comfortable with that decision now to an extent, but there is a level of perfectionism that is really put on environmentalists that I don't think it's other people are held to that standard. Would you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. This topic like infuriates me every time I talk about it, and I want to approach it with grace because people are allowed to be passionate about what they want to be passionate about.
Especially when it's like a lot of it is rooted in fact. Like a lot of it is actively 100% accurate and true. Like, absolutely, factory farming is 100% damaging the environment. We need to 100% reduce, and more people being vegan is a positive thing. But it's not a one size fits all approach. Not that we owe anyone an explanation, but I think this topic is fascinating, and putting people in strict black and white guidelines as to this is who you are, this is what you stand for, end of story, period, no room for discussion, no room for nuance, like that in my personal experience hasn't been helpful when it comes to the effectiveness of my advocacy.
Completely agree. It bothers me to my core when I get a comment about, like, oh, you're using milk. Oh, you're using cheese. Ma'am, in this economy, do you know the prices? I don't know about you, but plant-based alternatives for milk and cheese near me are ridiculously expensive. Ridiculously expensive. So have some grace for other people who may be limited with funds, maybe limited with allergies, dietary restrictions, or
Yeah.
mental health issues. Whereas, again, you cannot be perfect all the time, and you're just going to discourage people.
Yeah, you're going to discourage people from the movement. And I just think what it comes down to is you think you know people. You don't actually have any idea what people are dealing with behind the scenes. You have no idea. People maybe look at you and think there's no way that you have the allergies and health conditions that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And those things very much impact your life on a day-to-day basis in a way that people don't understand until they've lived through them. So no thanks. Like, don't really need your input,
Yeah.
especially when it's something that you've already struggled with on your own.
Yeah.
Like the things that you've had to change, the way that you've had to live your life as a result of something outside of your control, your health. So that's just one example. You don't know what's going on with people. You don't know what people are experiencing and their unique set of circumstances. So when we discourage this one size fits all approach to environmentalism, that's why. That's why we're doing it, because everybody is just showing up with the best resources that they have. Everybody's doing their best. That is okay. Nobody needs to make you feel less than because you're not doing things to meet some imaginary goalpost. And that applies to everything. It's just the veganism stuff is just one example.
Yeah.
I just think it's something that needs to be more widely spoken to.
Moral of the story, eat the damn cheese if you want the damn cheese.
In one of our previous episodes, we're like, food is that deep. And in this episode, we're like, it's not that deep.
Consistent spirals.
Consistent spirals. It's okay mentally if you're not doing the best all the time and things are hard and you're just giving it your all and it's not at the same level that other people have their all at. That sentence was a grammatical train wreck. And my English teacher grandmother
I understood what you were saying.
my English teacher grandmother and my writer father are reeling. You're not supposed to end a sentence with at. My podcast, my rules.
I won't tell.
Well, I think that's enough spirals for today. But let's just wrap it up with you're doing fine. Your intentions matter. Your day-to-day actions have an impact, but your mental health is very important. Your physical health is very important. Your financial wellness is very important. And doing what you can within all of those circumstances is enough. And thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you for caring about the planet. Because if you're caring about the planet, you are an environmentalist. Thank you if you have made it all this way through a lot of chaos. We appreciate that you have listened thus far.
We only have 2 episodes left in this season, which is absolutely crazy. And we're so excited to bring you some fun episodes in the coming month. So if you're not already subscribed, please do that now. Follow us on social media. We are at talking.in.spirals. It'll be linked. Come on. You guys know how this works.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to let us know, give us a review, and we want to know what you've liked from our season thus far so we can do it again in the next one as we get to planning. So be sure to connect with us, let us know what you think, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Love you guys. My little imperfect environmentalists. I love you so much.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Did I just wave on camera as if like they could see me wave to them?
They saw you in their heart.
Oh. Bye.
Bye. I don't know if I should say that. I'm canceling myself for that one. That was fully unintentional.
Do you want me to leave that in or take that out?
You have to take it out. My dad listens.
Oh my God. All right.
Hi, Dad.